917. Local. South China Sea. 63 nautical miles west-northwest of Palawan Island, Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone boundary. 41 nautical miles to the east. International waters. The same international waters the plan had been contesting with legal pressure, maritime militia activity, and increasingly assertive surface presence for the preceding 4 years. The morning was clear. Visibility unrestricted. Swells at 1.1 meters from the northeast. Wind at 9 knots. A routine South China Sea. Morning in every observable sense. USS Fitzgerald, DDG-62, Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, was conducting a freedom of navigation and presence patrol in the Western Philippine Sea corridor. Standard transit, standard speed. 15 knots, course 215 degrees true. Running lights on. AIS transmitting. The ship had been on station in this general operating area for 6 days. The planned surface presence in the region had been elevated for the entire period. 2 Type 052D destroyers and 1 Type 055 cruiser, operating in a loose formation. 38 nautical miles to the northwest had been present since day 2, holding course and speed, shadowing at a distance that was assertive without being provocative. The contact picture at 917 was managed. 3 commercial cargo vessels were transiting westbound at 22 to 31 nautical miles south. The 2 Type 052D destroyers, call them Track 1 and Track 2, had been holding their 38 nautical mile position for 11 hours. The Type 055 cruiser had repositioned at 600 to 52 nautical miles northwest, a slight increase in separation that the morning watch had logged as routine. The SLQ-32EW suite was passive, monitoring the standard plan radar emission picture. Consistent, elevated, baseline for this operating area. At 9:19:04, Track 1, the closer of the 2. Type 052D destroyers, now at 34 nautical miles. Transmitted on bridge-to-bridge channel 16. The message was in Chinese, immediately translated by Fitzgerald's language-qualified watch. The vessel was reporting a propulsion casualty, loss of steerage, request for nearby vessel to stand by for possible assistance. The transmission was addressed to all ships in the area. The GMDSS distress protocol format was correct. The coordinates given matched Track 1's last plotted position. The watch officer noted it. The TAO noted it. The captain was informed at 9:19:22. Under international maritime law and the long-standing maritime tradition of rendering assistance to vessels in distress, the appropriate response to a GMDSS distress call was acknowledgement and, if the distress was genuine and the assisting vessel was nearest, a course change toward the casualty. USS Fitzgerald, at 34 nautical miles, was the nearest vessel with the capability to render meaningful assistance. The captain's decision took 4 minutes. The decision was not whether to respond. The decision was how to respond. And the 4 minutes were spent doing something GMDSS protocol did not require. The SPY-1D was tasked to maximize coverage on Track 1's position. The SLQ-32 was shifted to active monitoring of Track 1's electromagnetic signature, and the engineering plant was brought to a higher readiness state. The captain changed course toward Track 1 at 09:23:11, acknowledging the distress call, beginning an approach, and doing both with every sensor on the ship pointed at the vessel claiming to be in distress. What neither the SPY-1D nor the SLQ-32 could see was Track 2. The second Type 052D had been holding at 38 nautical miles northwest for 11 hours. During those 11 hours, and specifically during the previous 6 hours, beginning before sunrise, Track 2 had been making a series of small, deliberate course adjustments. Each individual adjustment was less than 3 degrees. The cumulative effect of those adjustments over 6 hours was that Track 2 had repositioned itself from 38 nautical miles northwest of Fitzgerald's morning position to a new position that was now 29 nautical miles due west, on a bearing that put Fitzgerald between Track 2 and the Philippine landmass to the east. Each individual adjustment had been within the normal navigational variation that surface contact tracking logs as routine drift. The cumulative repositioning had not triggered any alert. At 9:23:22, 11 seconds after Fitzgerald began its approach toward Track 1, Track 2 brought its Type 346 BAESA fire control radar to active lock on Fitzgerald. The SLQ-32 registered the emission immediately. Active fire control radar, Type 346B, bearing 270, due west. Track 2's position. The emission was not a brief illumination. It was a sustained acquisition lock. At 9:23:31, 9 seconds after the fire control lock, the SPY-1D acquired 2 launches from Track 2's position, 2 tracks, both bearing 270, range 29 nautical miles. Velocity, Mach 2.0, accelerating. Low altitude cruise phase, sea skimming at 15 meters above the surface. Classification, YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missile. Rocket-boosted launch phase transitioning to turbofan cruise, with a final rocket-powered terminal sprint phase at Mach 3.0. Time of flight from Track 2 to Fitzgerald at computed track, 6 minutes, 41 seconds. General quarters at 9:23:34. From fire control lock detection to alarm, 12 seconds. From first missile track to alarm, 3 seconds. The distress call had been the operation's first act. The 6 hours of incremental repositioning had been the second. The YJ-18 launch was the third. The planning architecture required Fitzgerald to be on a course toward Track 1, heading northwest, 34 nautical miles from a vessel claiming to be in distress, when Track 2 launched from due west at 29 nautical miles. An approaching ship, committed to a distress response course, presents a more predictable track geometry than a free maneuvering warship. Predictable geometry improves terminal guidance probability. The plan was designed to put a U.S. destroyer on a known course at a known speed. With its attention directed northeast at the moment, a missile arrived from the west. The TAO had a complication the planning cell had not fully modeled. The captain's 4-minute deliberation period, the time spent bringing sensors to full coverage before responding to Track 1, had produced a continuous SPY-1D track on Track 2. The fire control radar emission at 09:23:22 hit a ship whose radar was already fully alert and whose engagement system had been running at heightened processing capacity for 4 minutes. 17 seconds from the first missile track to the first SM-6 away. Not because the system was slow, because the engagement geometry required the fire control computer to compute intercept solutions against 2 sea-skimming targets at 29 nautical miles bearing 270, while simultaneously maintaining track on the vessel claiming distress at 34 nautical miles bearing 340, and managing the updated tactical picture of Track 2 as a confirmed hostile contact. SM-6 rounds 1 and 2 away at 09:23:48, both against Track Alpha, the lead YJ-18. Engagement computed for mid-course phase, intercept at 19 nautical miles range. SM-6 rounds 3 and 4 away at 09:23:53. Against Track Bravo, the trailing YJ-18, 1.4 nautical miles behind Alpha. 4 SM-6 rounds in flight. The engagement clock, 5 minutes, 53 seconds to computed impact. The YJ-18's sea-skimming cruise phase presents a specific intercept geometry problem. At 15 meters altitude over a moderate sea state with 1.1 meter swells, the missile's radar cross-section intermittently merges with sea clutter returns at extended range. The SM-6's active seeker and terminal guidance performs well against this profile. The seeker was specifically designed for sea clutter discrimination, but the geometry required the SM-6 to descend to intercept altitude, and that descent brought the interceptor into the same sea clutter environment. The engagement was not clean geometry. It was workable geometry. At 9:27 and 12 seconds, 3 minutes and 24 seconds after the SM-6 launch, Round 1 acquired Track Alpha at 9.1 nautical miles intercept range and guided to detonation. Track Alpha neutralized at 0, 9:27:19. Debris field dispersed to the southwest. Tracked briefly. Lost. Round 3 reached track Bravo at 09:27:28, 9 seconds after the Alpha intercept, at 8.4 nautical miles. The Bravo missile had initiated its terminal sprint phase 11 seconds earlier than computed. The rocket-powered acceleration to Mach 3.0 had begun at 7 nautical miles, rather than the standard 6. The SM-6 Seeker reacquired after a 0.6-second track interruption caused by the Bravo missile's sprint phase, infrared signature overwhelming the radar Seeker's clutter filter momentarily. Reacquisition at 7.1 nautical miles. Guidance to detonation. Track Bravo neutralized at 09:27:28. Rounds 2 and 4 were commanded to self-destruct at 09:27:41. 2 YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles. 2 SM-6 intercepts. 0 penetrations. The engagement had consumed 13 seconds from first track acquisition to first SM-6 away, and 6 minutes from first SM-6 launch to final intercept. Fitzgerald had turned during the engagement. The captain had ordered an emergency course change to 270 immediately after general quarters, presenting a narrower beam aspect to the inbound missiles and complicating the YJ-18's terminal guidance geometry. That course change had contributed 140 meters of additional lateral separation from the YJ-18's locked intercept corridor by the time of terminal phase. Track 2, the Type-052D that had fired, had turned north at 09:23:45, 11 seconds after the launch. At 29 nautical miles, the ship was outside Fitzgerald's SM-6 engagement range, under current rules of engagement for surface engagements without additional authorization. Track 2 was accelerating north at 28 knots. Track 1, the vessel that had transmitted the distress call, had turned northwest at 09:24:00. Its propulsion casualty had resolved itself 27 seconds after Fitzgerald turned toward it. The distress call was not a distress call. It had been the operation's bait. The 4-minute approach window was what the planning cell had purchased with it. The TAO was managing 3 simultaneous situations at 09:28:00, confirming the intercepts on the outbound missiles, tracking 2 planned surface contacts now withdrawing at speed, and reporting to 7th Fleet. He was doing all 3. The ship was undamaged. The engagement had produced no physical contact with Fitzgerald, but the operational situation, 2 planned destroyers that had just conducted a coordinated deception plus strike operation against a U.S. warship in international waters, now withdrawing at speed, was not resolved. The captain's report to 7th Fleet went at 9:28:44. The report was specific. Coordinated plan operation. Track 1. False distress transmission, used to induce a predictable approach course. Track 2. 6 hours of covert incremental repositioning, followed by YJ-18 launch at 29 nautical miles from a fire control lock that activated 11 seconds after Fitzgerald began its distress approach. Both YJ-18s neutralized by SM-6. No damage to Fitzgerald. Both planned contacts now withdrawing north. Track 1 distress call assessed as operationally deliberate. Request authorization for response. 7th Fleet acknowledged at 9:30. Indopacom was in the circuit. The legal framework for a response to a planned surface combatant YJ-18 launch against a U.S. destroyer in international waters was unambiguous. The authorization came at 9:36:19. Time from the YJ-18 launches to authorization, 12 minutes, 48 seconds. Target package, Site Alpha. Track 2, Type-052D, last known position. Withdrawing north at 28 knots. Tomahawk employment against a maneuvering surface combatant at sea is technically feasible using the weapon's GPS mid-course guidance, updated by Link 16, targeting data. But it requires a continuously updated position fix. The MQ-4 Sea Triton surveillance asset overhead at 55,000 feet had been tasked to maintain continuous track on both planned contacts from the moment of the YJ-18 launch. Track 2's position was updated every 14 seconds. Site Bravo. Track 1, Type-052D, last known position. Withdrawing northwest at 22 knots. Same tracking protocol. Site Charlie. The PLAN Maritime Operations Coordination Facility on Fiery Cross Reef, 180 nautical miles to the northwest. Intelligence assessed that the operational authorization for the Track 2 YJ-18 launch had been transmitted from this facility. The authorization signal had been intercepted on a monitored encrypted frequency at 092247, 37 seconds before Track 2's fire control radar activated. The facility was fixed infrastructure on a man-made island, Site Delta. A second PLAN military installation on Mischief Reef, 140 nautical miles northwest. Radar and communications infrastructure, assessed as part of the sensor network that had provided Track 2 with continuous position data on Fitzgerald during its 6-hour incremental repositioning. USS Antietam, CG-54, was operating 88 nautical miles to the south. Tomahawk employment against Tracks 1 and 2 required continuous position updates. Antietam's fire control system was linked to the Triton track data through the data link architecture. Tomahawk launch authorization received at 093640. USS Shiloh, CG-67, was 140 nautical miles to the east. Authorization received simultaneously. Carrier Strike Group USS Carl Vinson, CVN-70, was operating 220 nautical miles to the northeast in the Philippine Sea. Air Wing launch authorization at 093700. F/A-18E/F. Super Hornets at combat readiness in the alert posture that had been standard during Fitzgerald's patrol. T+0. YJ-18 launches detected. 9:23. T+5 minutes. Both missiles neutralized. 9:28. T+13 minutes. Authorization received. 9:36. T+14 minutes. First Tomahawk. USS Antietam. 9:37. T+18 minutes. First F/A-18E/F. Wheels up from Vinson. 9:41. T+31 minutes. Tomahawk impacts Track 2 updated position. 9:54. T+66 minutes. F/A-18 first wave weapons release. Fixed sights. 10:29. Total from YJ-18 launch to first adversary contact neutralized. 31 minutes. The Tomahawk engagement against Track 2 was the engagement type most difficult to execute cleanly. A Type 052. D destroyer moving at 28 knots covers 0.47 nautical miles per minute. In the 17 minutes between Antietam's first Tomahawk launch and its computed impact time, Track 2 would move approximately 8 nautical miles from its launch point position. The Triton's 14-second update cycle meant the Tomahawk's GPS mid-course guidance was working with position data that was, at any moment, up to 14 seconds stale, placing the vessel within a positional uncertainty ellipse of approximately 200 meters. The Tomahawk's terminal seeker needed to acquire the ship's radar cross-section inside that uncertainty ellipse. Tomahawk Round 1 from Antietam, 9:37. Cost, $1.87 million. Target, Track 2 updated position. Running cost, $1.87 million. Tomahawk Round 2, 093722. Track 2 follow-on, 22-second interval. Running cost, $3.7 million. Tomahawk Rounds 3 and 4, 0938. Track 1 updated position, 2 rounds. Running cost, $7.5 million. Tomahawks 5 through 9 from Antietam and Shiloh, 0939 through 0941. Site Charlie, Fiery Cross Reef Operations Facility. 5 rounds. Running cost, $16.8 million. Tomahawks 10 through 13, 0942. Site Delta, Mischief Reef Radar, and Communications Infrastructure. 4 rounds. Running cost, $24.3 million. At 9:54, 31 minutes after the YJ-18 launches, Tomahawk Round 1 reached Track 2's updated position. The Triton's 14-second update had placed Track 2 at a specific coordinate. The Tomahawk's terminal seeker acquired a large radar cross-section contact within 340 meters of the designated point. The weapon guided to impact on Track 2's port side amidships. The round's 450-kilogram warhead initiated against the Type-052D's hull plating at Mach 0.8 terminal velocity. The ship sustained severe structural damage. Superstructure impact. Fire amidships. Speed reduction from 28 knots to approximately 4 knots over the following 90 seconds. The Type-052D was still afloat and under limited power. It was not a functional combatant. Running cost at T plus 32 minutes. $3.7 million for 2 Tomahawks against Track 2. A Type-052D costs approximately $900 million to build and requires 4 to 6 years to construct and commission. Both Tomahawks impacted the same vessel. Assessed damage. Severe, non-sinking operational capability eliminated. A $900 million warship rendered non-operational by $3.7 million in Tomahawks. Track 1 was the fog element. Tomahawk rounds 3 and 4 reached Track 1's computed position at 0956. The Triton feed showed Track 1's position clearly. The vessel was no longer withdrawing at 22 knots. It had reduced speed to 8 knots and changed course to 190 degrees at 0948, 6 minutes before the Tomahawks arrived. The course change had moved Track 1 1.4 nautical miles from its projected position. Tomahawk Round 3's terminal seeker acquired a contact 520 meters from the designated coordinates. Within the acquisition envelope, Round 3 impacted Track 1's stern section. Round 4 arrived 14 seconds later and impacted midships. Track 1 was rendered non-operational, maintaining minimal steerage only. Both planned destroyers were non-operational within 33 minutes of their YJ-18 launch. The F/A-18 first wave arrived at weapons release range at 10:29. Targets: Site Charlie, Fiery Cross Reef. 8 JSOW munitions against the operations facility, communications tower, and radar array that had authorized and guided the Track 2 operation. 6 of 8 rounds confirmed impact. The operations facility and communications tower were confirmed inoperable by Triton imagery at 10:31. 2 JSOW rounds missed their designated aim points. 1 impacted a storage structure adjacent to the communications tower. 1 experienced a terminal guidance anomaly and impacted the reef's northern approach road. The radar array on the reef's southern position was undamaged. Second fog element, F/A, 18-second wave at 10:41. 6 JDAMs against Site Delta, Mischief Reef radar and communications nodes. All 6 confirmed impact. Both radar installations on Mischief Reef confirmed neutralized by 10:42:18. At 10:58, all FA-18 formations turned northeast toward Vinson. All aircraft recovered. Weapons loads expended. The full accounting. Plan operational investment. 2 YJ-18 missiles at approximately $3 million each. $6 million. 6 hours of incremental repositioning, fuel, false distress transmission coordination, command and targeting support. Estimated $800,000. Total, $6.8 million. Damage achieved to Fitzgerald, 0. Both missiles intercepted. No contact with the ship. No systems degraded. No personnel affected. The plan had spent $6.8 million to test whether a deception operation, fake distress call plus covert repositioning, could create a firing opportunity against a U.S. warship in the South China Sea. The test produced 2 SM-6 intercepts and the loss of 2 Type-052D destroyers. U.S. response cost: 13 Tomahawks at $1.87 million, $24.3 million, 14 F/A, 18 E/F sorties, $12.6 million, 1 M Q4C Triton sortie, $1.1 million. Total, $38.0 million. Adversary losses: Track 2 severely damaged, operational capability eliminated. Track 1 severely damaged. Operational capability eliminated. Site Charlie Operations Facility and Communications Tower confirmed neutralized. Site Delta Radar Network confirmed neutralized. Reef Radar Array, 1 of 2, survived JSOW anomaly. Total assessed value of assets rendered inoperable. 2. Type-052D destroyers at $900 million each plus fixed infrastructure, approximately $2.1 billion. The plan's strategic miscalculation had 3 layers. The deception architecture was operationally sound. A false distress call combined with 6 hours of covert incremental repositioning to create a firing solution from an unexpected bearing. That is not an unsophisticated plan. The Maritime Distress Protocol creates a legal and moral pressure that is not easily dismissed. The 4 minutes Fitzgerald's captains spent deliberating before changing course were the correct 4 minutes. They were also the 4 minutes that produced the continuous track on Track 2 that the SM-6 engagement relied on. The planning cell had modeled Fitzgerald's response time to a distress call at 60 to 90 seconds. The standard response window documented in maritime operations analysis. The 4-minute deliberation had not been modeled. The result was that Track 2's fire control lock activated against a ship whose SPY-1D had been in full alert coverage for 4 minutes, not a ship whose CIC had been focused on a distress approach for 4 minutes. Second, the YJ-18 sprint initiation. Track Bravo's early sprint activation, Mach 3.0 at 7 nautical miles rather than 6, was a pre-programmed variation designed to complicate intercept timing. It produced a 0.6-second SM-6 seeker interruption. The SM-6 reacquired. The variation was real. It was insufficient. Third, the response timeline. The planning cell's model assumed that engaging planned surface combatants, sovereign warships of a nuclear-armed state, would trigger a minimum 12 to 24-hour political and legal consultation period before any kinetic response. The Tomahawks were away 14 minutes after the YJ-18 launches. Both Type-052D destroyers were non-operational 33 minutes after their missiles failed to reach their target. USS Fitzgerald, DDG-62, 0 damage. All systems nominal. SM-6 inventory, 20 of 24 remaining. SPY-1D all arrays nominal throughout. VLS fully intact. Personnel, unaffected. Ship status, fully operational. Patrol continued as tasked. USS Antietam, CG-54. No damage. 9 Tomahawks expended. USS Shiloh, CG-67. No damage. 4 Tomahawks expended. USS Carl Vinson, CVN-70. 14F/A, 18E/F sorties. All aircraft recovered. Total U.S. response cost, $38.0 million. Adversary. Track 2. Severely damaged operational capability eliminated. Track 1. Severely damaged operational capability eliminated. Site Charlie. Operations facility and communications tower neutralized. Reef radar array survived. Site Delta. Radar network confirmed neutralized. U.S. execution gaps. Track 1 course change created 1.4 nautical mile positional error. Both Tomahawks still impacted the vessel, but not at optimal aim points. Site Charlie Reef radar array survived JSOW anomaly. PLAN personnel on both vessels. Disposition and status not assessed in this engagement record. 44 minutes. The interval between a Type-052D destroyer launching 2 YJ-18 missiles at USS Fitzgerald from a position achieved by 6 hours of covert repositioning, and the first Tomahawk impacting that same destroyer. The deception architecture was 9 months in the planning. The incremental repositioning was 6 hours in the execution. The YJ-18 engagement lasted 6 minutes and 41 seconds from launch to terminal phase. The SM-6 engagement lasted 4 minutes and 9 seconds from first round away to final intercept. The plan's operation required a distress call that would not be questioned, a repositioning that would not be detected, and 2 YJ-18 missiles that would not be intercepted. 2 of 3 conditions were met. The third was not. Fitzgerald's patrol sector is unchanged. The corridor is open,